Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Evening TV and Noah Radio. I am Evening Ransom, and today we are going to talk about gluttony. Gluttony and narcissism. Now, what I mean by gluttony is an indulgence, overindulgence in all kinds of things, in food, in hoarding stuff in their home. It can even be both ways in food. It can be anorexic and it can be obese, but total focus on food. Shopping. Narcissists cannot tell themselves no. They cannot be flawed or have mistakes or anything like that, and they can't tell themselves no. They're, kind of like spoiled children. And usually these are ways for them to control the people in their families or control their environment. I do think is that while they're in active addiction, it very much looks the same. And if you're a child being raised by a drug addict or an alcoholic, it will be essentially the same as being raised by a narcissist, because they're just completely focused on their addiction. Whereas the narcissist is completely focused on themselves. They just can't put a child first. I think that it can manifest in anything, but it's an overindulgence and the inability to look at themselves really just right up front and say, I'm screwing up here, and tell yourself, in that case, it would be that they are with an enabler or the person feeding them is a narcissist. So, a lot of times this will happen with a parent, like a really controlling mother, and a daughter will develop anorexia or bulimia or overeating, because the only thing she has control over is her own body, and her mother can't control that. So she does. So it is a means of control, and in case it could potentially be both of them are narcissists. But as we know, narcissism is an inability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's an extreme focus on self. And I have had numerous people, and this is sort of an eye-opener, is because I had so many narcissists in my life, because I just attracted them because I was raised that way. And when I looked at it, I realized that a vast majority of them also had eating disorders. And it went all the way from bulimia to anorexia to obesity. And it was, I'm thinking about this bulimic in particular, it ruled her life and ruled me whenever I was with her. She could only eat one thing, so we had to go to this one place. And usually if we didn't go there, I had to eat alone. She would just watch me. It's another way of being special, because they're not like everybody else. They can only eat certain things, that kind of thing. And then if they're obese, they get people to wait on them. There's a show on right now called My 600-Pound Life or something like that, and all the people are over 600 pounds. And it seems to me that a vast majority of them are very childlike and quite demanding, but also the person enabling them, very much feeding this problem, because they have to be, because the person can't even get up and feed themselves. So there's somebody there feeding them to death. And I can't imagine doing it. I can't imagine if I had somebody 600 pounds that I would just keep bringing them food. I think I would just start being tough loving. I'd be like, you can have some food when you can get your big butt out of the bed and get it yourself. But, because it's killing them. It's killing them, Also, like, I had a grandmother that was really obese. For sure, her father was a narcissist, and possibly her brothers. And she was abused. She was sexually abused as a child. But the whole time I knew her, which she was fairly young when I was born. She was only about 46 when I was born. In my family, I think I mentioned before, that my mother and my sister-in-law, my brother's ex-wife now, but wife during the whole time I was with the family, is obese. And they both just absolutely hated me. I mean, they were so mean to me, and they would like, she would say that she wasn't mad at me, or what's the matter? Are you mad at me for something? And she would say no, because she didn't have any reason. But I knew that was the reason. I knew and I think that my brother actually bred that. I think that he somehow built in her a jealousy about that in me. And also I think that because she had a thin sister, that it was easier to hate me than hate her sister. So, once everybody was ganging up on me, she was all ready to do it too. And it was like, now I'm beating you finally, It's just an inability to tell themselves no, because they're special. They're special, and they should have everything they want, and their entitlement is just outrageous. And it goes along with that. It goes along with being spoiled and entitled and doing nothing wrong and being special and all of that, and getting people to wait on them, and having, it was just all about that. And it is, all these disorders are extremely narcissistic when you think about the disorder itself. The disorder itself is completely narcissistic, because it makes it impossible for you to be thinking about someone else. At least they would be down the row, at least to third position, because it would be the addiction first, then yourself next, and then maybe another person. But maybe and probably only because you need that person to serve you, or earn money so you can go shopping or whatever it is. Most of the time there are multiple addictions, so it's not uncommon to find someone who is overweight, overspends, smokes, and does it all. I'm thinking of one particular example. She was definitely abused in childhood, and she was abusive. She was abused by her mother, and she was abusive to her children. And so, just a meanness and a lack of compassion. But why addictions and narcissism go together? And I use the term gluttony because it's overindulgence. It's overindulgence in any one of those kinds of addictions. And like I said, it can be either the person or the enabler, the person feeding them. Either one or both can be a narcissist. But there is definitely narcissism going on when an indulgence or an addiction like that exists. Yeah, it always is somewhere. If you have any experience with hoarding or an alcohol addiction or a shopping addiction, or my ex-husband actually was a workaholic. He would stay late all the time, never be able to tell himself no, never tell himself I should go home and be with the family. Never. He just did whatever he wanted, and usually it was easier for him to stay at work, so he just always did. So even workaholism, it's just an inability to put care about someone else's needs, his wife and children, and especially because workaholism is so acceptable, because he could say, I was just trying to support my family. Yeah, but he wasn't, because when he left me, he took every last penny. He kept all the money for himself. So, self-focused, just completely self-focused. And, any of us, if you're that self-focused, you drive yourself nuts. You do. And so, if the narcissism came first, it seems like you would develop an addiction, because you just, it's just so self-focused. You start obsessing on, and I would say that the only healing that can be done in that case is to get out in the world and give something to somebody else, not take. Serve, not be served. That would be, practice compassion and empathy. Really, that is the cure. Thank you very much, you guys. I will talk with you later. Bye-bye.
Empowering those who yearn for more love, intimacy, and passion in their relationships and lives. Find the My Ransom Notes podcast online at eveningransom.com. Join us next time on the My Ransom Notes Noah podcast, the podcast for newly opening and awakening hearts.